The ruins of Corinthos stood alone upon a windswept hill, broken teeth gnashing at the sky. Once its towers had rivaled the heavens themselves, built of marble that gleamed like moonlight and domes plated in gold. Pilgrims from across the empire had ascended its steep roadways to kneel before monks who spoke in riddles, whose chants were said to echo in the ears of gods. Now only silence reigned, no bells tolled, no prayers rang. The fountains where holy water once poured were dry, cracked basins where weeds clawed at stone. The mosaic floors were shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces, as if heaven itself had cast down lightning to unmake them. And still the air whispered. The common folk of the surrounding villages spoke of it only in hushed tones, that Corinthos had been cursed, that the monks had angered a power greater than kings, greater than gods. Herdsmen would not graze their flocks near its shadow. Travelers veered miles from its hill, preferring to risk the jaws of wolves rather than walk its road at night. But one man came willingly, Caliph. He moved as if the ground itself yielded to him. His cloak rippled faintly in the moonlight, but no breeze stirred the hillside. The garment seemed spun of emptiness, woven to drink light, to swallow sight. In its folds his body blurred, half present, half absent. When he shifted, his form flickered like a memory one struggles to recall. He paused before the gate. What remained of it was little more than a shattered arch, vines strangling its once proud pillars. Caliph tilted his head, listening. His eyes, pale gray, glimmered faintly. They were not eyes that belonged to the world of men. The silence pressed against him like a living thing. Even silence guards what it loves. His lips curved into the barest suggestion of a smile. Then he stepped inside. The ruined halls. The nave of Corinthos was a skeleton of what it had been. Roof beams jutted upward like ribs. Broken stained glass windows scattered shards of colored light across the floor. Reds and blues glowing faintly like spilled jewels. The columns that once soared to heaven now leaned like weary giants. Caliph moved without haste. Every step was deliberate, measured, noiseless. His cloak shimmered faintly as if swallowing the fractured light, bending it around him. He touched nothing, but he saw everything. He saw the runes carved into the stone walls, their shapes eroded yet not destroyed. He read the faint traces of murals. Monks kneeling before a crowned figure wreathed in shadow. Warriors prostrate before a throne that seemed empty. He read the story the ruin whispered. The story of men who had bartered their souls to forces unseen. And he thought, they built temples, but not to gods. The air grew colder as he advanced deeper. Dust lay thick, yet in strange places it was disturbed, as if swept by unseen hands. The statues that lined the corridors had faces gouged away, but not by vandals. By chisels wielded with careful intent, as if to erase memory itself. Caliph bent low, brushing a hand across the floor. Beneath layers of dust, he uncovered the faint trace of a circle drawn in chalk, runes circling its perimeter, a ward old but not dead. He rose, his pulse remained steady, though a lesser man would have fled. To Caliph, the ruin was not curse but promise. Every forgotten chamber, every half-buried inscription was a map leading him deeper. The spiral descent. At the far end of the nave, hidden behind a collapsed altar, Caliph found the stairwell. The air that exhaled from its depths was different, heavier, carrying the scent of damp stone, mold, and something sharper, metallic, like blood spilled centuries ago, yet never dried. The stair coiled downward into shadow. He descended, each step careful, weight balanced, cloak brushing the walls like liquid night. Symbols lined the spiral, serpents devouring their tails, circles within circles. They glimmered faintly as his presence neared, as if awakening. He whispered a counter-phrase in the tongue of his masters. Shadows pass among shadows. The light dimmed, appeased. The descent lasted long minutes. The deeper he went, the more the world above seemed a dream. The silence here was different. Not the stillness of neglect, but the stillness of watching. When at last he reached the bottom, the stair gave way to a hall vast enough to swallow a cathedral. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness, upheld by pillars so broad that 5 men could not encircle them. Between those pillars stood sarcophagi, stone coffins carved in the likeness of monks, their hands folded in prayer. Caliph entered and the dust stirred. At first they seemed still, lifeless statues, but as he passed, the air thickened, vibrating with a low hum. One coffin lid shifted, then another. Figures rose. They were not flesh, not bone. They were forms held together by dust and will, cloaked in shreds of robes, faces blank shadows. In their hands appeared staves of stone, etched with glyphs that bled faint light. Caleth stopped. He did not reach for the dagger at his belt. Instead, he inhaled slowly, steadying his mind. He had been trained for this. He lowered his head and spoke in the old tongue, voice steady as a litany. I do not come as thief. I do not come as pilgrim. I come as witness. Let shadows pass among shadows. The figures wavered, staves lifting as if to strike. Their blank faces tilted, listening. The dust that held them together shifted in the air, whispering like sand blown over stone. For a heartbeat, Caleth thought they would fall upon him. Then slowly they lowered their staves. One by one, they sank back into their sarcophagi. Lids slid shut, silence returned. Caleth's lips curved faintly. But inwardly he thought, even the dead obey when spoken to in the right tongue. The altar of bronze. At the far end of the chamber stood a dais. Upon it rested an altar of bronze, untarnished by time. Its surface gleamed as though freshly polished. Upon it lay a cylinder, thick and heavy, sealed with clasps shaped like serpents devouring their own tails. The serpent's ruby eyes glowed faintly, pulsing like hearts. Caleth approached. The air grew heavier with each step. His cloak dimmed, its shimmer faltering, as if the altar's presence unmade his concealment. He reached out. For the first time, his hand was fully visible, pale, long-fingered, trembling slightly. Not with fear, but with anticipation. He whispered in the old tongue, the words rasping like stones grinding, "Release what you guard." The hour has come, the serpent stirred. Their ruby eyes flared, their stone bodies uncoiled with a grinding hiss. The clasp fell open, the cylinder split apart. Within lay the chronicle of the forgotten kings. It was not merely a scroll, it was a thing alive. Its vellum quivered as though breathing. The ink writhed faintly, symbols shifting like serpents. A faint sound issued from it, not wind, not sigh, but whispers, the murmurs of countless voices speaking at once. Caleth lifted it with reverence. The chamber darkened, shadows lengthening as though drawn to it. His gray eyes gleamed in the dimness, reflecting the writhing glyphs. History hides more than truth, he murmured. It hides weapons. The omen. As he turned to leave, the silence shattered. The pillars trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The sarcophagi rattled. A voice, vast and inhuman, seeped from the stones. The Watcher sees you. Caleth froze. His cloak flickered as though the voice itself sought to strip him bare. Slowly he turned. The chamber was empty. The dust monk slept. The altar was still. But the words clung to the air. The Watcher sees you. Caleth smiled faintly, though his heart beat harder. Then let the Watcher watch. He pulled his cloak tight. His body dissolved, fading into nothingness. The chamber lay empty once more. But the serpent clasps on the altar pulsed with faint light. And high above, where the ruins' broken towers reached toward the moon, something unseen stirred. Something awake. The ruin did not release him easily. Caleth had stolen the chronicle, yes. But as he turned from the bronze altar, the silence of the monastery no longer felt like the calm of sleep. It felt like a gaze. The very stones seemed to breathe. The air pressed heavy against his skin, as though the ruin itself resisted his departure. He ascended the stair, scroll tucked within his cloak, each step a negotiation between his mastery of shadows and the weight of unseen eyes. His cloak shimmered faintly, yet more than once its veil faltered, leaving his pale hands briefly exposed. The Watcher sees you. The words still throbbed in his ears. They were not merely sound, they lingered like a mark upon the soul. At the top of the stair, Caleth entered a long colonnade. The pillars cracked, moonlight falling in silver shafts through gaps in the ceiling. Dust hung in the air like mist. For a moment the ruin looked beautiful, almost serene, until the shafts of light trembled. Not by wind, not by movement, by breath. Something vast inhaled and exhaled all around him. Invisible yet palpable as the tide, Caleth did not falter. He walked as though nothing stirred, as though the ruin was merely ruin. Yet his mind turned sharp, precise. Every sense expanded. The scrape of a pebble beneath his boot, the shift of air along the back of his neck. He knew he was not alone. The colonnade ended at a broken courtyard, open to the night sky. Statues lined its edges, eroded figures of monks clutching staves, their faces smoothed into blankness. Weeds coiled through their cracks. Caleth moved through them, but his steps slowed. The statues were not as still as they seemed. Their heads had turned, he paused. His hand drifted toward the dagger hidden at his belt. The nearest statue's blank face seemed to angle further toward him. Stone grated faintly, though its body did not move. Caliph exhaled slowly, steadying his pulse. He whispered again in the tongue of the ancients, his voice carrying just enough to echo in the silent courtyard. Shadows pass among shadows. For a breath, the statues froze. Then with the faintest sigh, their heads turned back, gazes returning to the sky. The pressure in the air lightened, though did not vanish. Caliph passed between them and did not look back. As he walked, his thoughts slipped inward, not willingly, but as if stirred by the ruin itself. The monastery seemed to pull his memories, forcing him to relive the day he had first been unmade. The caverns of the Vale. He had been no more than 12 winters old. A boy without name, traded by his mother for a handful of silver to the cloaked men who came to their village. He remembered their torches flickering against the cavern walls, their chants echoing like the wings of bats. They had blindfolded him and stripped him bare. Cold water poured over him, black as ink, until he gasped and nearly drowned. Then they whispered into his ears, voices in tongues he could not understand. He felt something slide beneath his skin, something sharp yet unseen. When the blindfold was removed, he no longer knew his name. The faces of his mother, his village, his childhood, Sunday gone. All that remained was the order's command. To walk unseen, to erase himself, to watch where none could. They taught him silence first. Not merely the silence of steps, but of thought. He learned to hold his breath until even his heartbeat felt forgotten. He learned to stand in open daylight without notice. To bend not only light, but memory around him. And when at last he succeeded, when even the masters lost him in plain sight, they called him by no name at all. Only the shadow that walks in daylight. It was not a name, it was a curse. And now, as he walked through the haunted ruin of Corinthos, he felt that same curse tighten around him like a shroud. Caliph emerged into another hall, vaster than the nave above. Here the floor was inlaid with mosaics, not shattered but eerily preserved. He stopped, crouching to study them. The tiles depicted a throne of black stone, faceless kings kneeling before it. Above them loomed figures not human, vast, formless shapes, their outlines blurred, their hands outstretched as if granting crowns. Caliph traced the mosaic with a fingertip. The tiles were cold, colder than the stone around them. He thought of the chronicle beneath his cloak. The vellum seemed to pulse faintly, warming against his chest as if eager, as if aware of where he stood. He straightened. The air here was alive with whispers, faint, indistinct. Not his imagination, true voices murmuring in tongues older than empires. The sanctum ended in a great door of iron, half collapsed. Beyond it lay the open night once more, but the threshold was marked with wards carved deep into the stone. He paused, studying them. They were designed not merely to keep intruders out, but to keep something in. The Watcher sees you. The words brushed his mind again, not spoken aloud this time, but inside him, as if thought itself had been invaded. He gritted his teeth and whispered in the old tongue words of severance. Witness is not command. You may see, but you do not hold. The wards flickered faintly, their glow dimming. The pressure eased. Caliph slipped through the doorway into the night air. The ruins of Corinthos spread behind him, black skeletons against the moon. Before him stretched the valley, pale with mist. Villages lay scattered like sparks on the dark earth, their hearth fires flickering faintly. Caliph inhaled, filling his lungs with the clean night, yet the weight of unseen eyes lingered. He could feel it, vast, ancient, patient. Whatever had spoken in the monastery was not bound by stone. It had marked him. He drew the chronicle from his cloak. The scroll pulsed faintly, its ink shifting like restless snakes. He unrolled only an inch, just enough to glimpse the glyphs. They writhed, rearranging themselves into shapes that seared his eyes. For a heartbeat, he saw visions. Armies of shadows marching, crowns hovering above thrones that burned with no fire, kings whose mouths opened but spoke in voices not their own. He rolled it shut. His breath came sharp but steady. It begins, he whispered. The eyes in the sky. As he descended the hillside, Caliph did not see them, but they saw him. High above, where the last tower of Corinthos pierced the sky like a broken spear, something perched. Its form was vast, wings folded, body cloaked in darkness so deep it seemed part of the night itself. Its eyes burned faintly, not with flame, but with cold light, the light of watchers who do not sleep. It had no mouth, yet its presence carried hunger. When Caliph passed into the mist below, the thing stirred. Dust cascaded from the tower. The shape unfolded wings wider than the ruins themselves, blotting the moon for an instant. Then it was gone, soaring into the night. The final whisper. Caliph reached the forest edge, shadows cloaking him once more. The chronicle beat against his chest like a second heart. The Watcher's mark weighed on his soul, but he smiled faintly. To him, fear was not enemy, but fuel. The greater the danger, the greater the reward. Still, as he vanished into the tree line, a whisper followed him. Not from within, not from the scroll, but from the night itself. "We see you still?" He paused only a moment. Then, without a word, he stepped deeper into the forest, and the night swallowed him whole. The ruin of Corinth stood silent once more. But its silence was no longer that of sleep. It was the silence of something awake.